Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a question that feels almost, well, mystical, doesn't it? Is charisma something you're just born with? Like a genetic lottery win.
Or is it actually a skill, something you can learn?
Exactly. Can you learn to have that magnetic quality, the one that just draws people in?
Yeah, it's that idea that some people just have it, right? That spark.
That indefinable thing that makes you want to lean in when they talk? Trust them instantly.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even follow them.
Mm-hmm. And that's really the core of our deep dive today. We're using Olivia Fox Cabane's book, The Charisma Myth, as our guide here.
Right. And our mission is basically to pull apart the concepts and techniques from this source material. Because it makes a really strong case, actually.
A case that charisma isn't some rare gift.
No, it argues it's a set of behaviors anyone can develop.
And if we follow the book's thinking, we'll uncover how you can actually, increase your personal magnetism and influence.
Often through surprisingly simple adjustments, it seems.
Yeah, it's not always grand gestures.
And there are some genuinely mind-bending ideas in here, like that story about Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, being able to walk through Grand Central Terminal totally unnoticed.
Exactly. And then this other idea, which feels quite radical, that managing your internal state is presented as more critical than any external behavior.
That really flies in the face of common assumptions, doesn't it?
It does. You think charisma is about being loud or witty or, I don't know, having a great smile?
But the book suggests it's something much deeper, something internal driving the external.
Okay, let's unpack this then. What is charisma, according to this deep dive? How does the book actually define it?
Well, Cabane cuts right to it. She defines charisma pretty simply, actually. It's what makes people like you, trust you, and want to be led by you.
So it's not necessarily about being the life of the party.
Not necessarily. It's about connection and influence.
And this isn't just some abstract, feel-good idea. The book points out it has real consequences, right?
Oh, absolutely. It directly impacts how you're perceived. Are you seen as a leader or more of a follower? Do your ideas get traction?
Does your project actually succeed?
Exactly. And she backs this up with research. Studies consistently show that people seen as more charismatic, they tend to get higher performance ratings.
And they're seen as more effective by colleagues, by bosses.
Right. It has tangible, real-world effects, especially at work.
Okay, so let's bust some myths right away.
Right.
Because the book is very clear on this, isn't it?
It is.
You don't need to be naturally outgoing
Nope.
or super physically attractive
Not required.
or even change your fundamental personality.
That's one of the central arguments, really. The book explicitly says none of those are prerequisites.
So the core idea is what?
That charisma is a collection of specific learnable behaviors. And it mentions these controlled experiments
Oh, yeah.
where researchers could actually increase or decrease someone's perceived charisma, almost like turning a dial.
Turning a dial. Wow. That feels like pretty strong evidence that it's not just some fixed thing you either have or you don't.
If you can manipulate it in a lab setting, yeah, it suggests there are mechanics you can understand and influence.
Okay. So if it's a set of behaviors, what are the foundational elements? What are these behaviors built on?
The book identifies three crucial pillars. These are the bedrock.
Okay, what are they?
Presence, power, and warmth. These are the core components that, when projected, create that perception of charisma.
And one really fascinating point the book makes is that these qualities are communicated, well, not just by what you say,
Right, but how you say it. And maybe even more importantly, through your body language.
which is largely controlled by the subconscious mind, right?
Exactly. And this leads to what Cabane emphasizes again and again, the absolutely critical role of your internal state.
Your feelings, your thoughts, your physical sensations.
Your whole internal world, basically. It dictates your body language.
Yeah.
The book argues pretty strongly that getting your internal state right is the most efficient path.
To naturally projecting charismatic behaviors.
Yes. Trying to just change the outside stuff without dealing with the inside. It's like painting over rust. It doesn't really fix the problem.
That makes a lot of sense. If you feel tense inside, your body's probably going to show it somehow.
Definitely.
Okay, let's dig into that first pillar, presence. What exactly is that?
Presence is about being fully in the moment, completely engaged with whoever you're interacting with.
The book uses Bill Clinton as an example, doesn't it?
Yeah, that famous quality he had. People consistently said that when he was talking to them, they felt like the only person in the world.
He was totally present.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the cost of lacking presence. While others notice it, even subconsciously.
That slight delay in reacting, the eyes glazing over maybe.
As the book points out, our brains process expressions in milliseconds. So even tiny cues signal you're not really there.
And that just kills the connection,
Yeah.
right? Diminishes your perceived charisma instantly.
Instantly. And what makes staying present so hard? The book links it back to our ancient survival wiring.
Our brains are hardwired to be distracted.
By novelty, yeah. That rustle in the bushes could have been a predator. So the ones who noticed every little thing, they survived.
Huh. So our ancestors' success is our modern-day distraction problem.
Pretty much. But the benefits of cultivating presence are huge.
Like what?
Well, it improves your body language naturally. It makes you a better listener, sharpens your focus, and it even lets you, actually enjoy moments more fully.
The book mentions Tara Brach, the meditation teacher.
Right, about how our constant internal chatter prevents us from truly experiencing life as it happens.
So is there a practical way to build presence? Something quick.
Yes, the book suggests a simple 1-minute exercise. Just spend 60 seconds focusing intently on something sensory.
Like sounds around you. Or physical sensations.
Oh,
Just your breath.
any of those. Cobain notes that simply practicing this, even if your mind wanders all over the place, actually boosts your presence over time. Just the effort counts.
Interesting. Okay, so presence is foundational.
Hmm.
Being fully there. What about the other two pillars? Power and warmth.
These also have deep evolutionary roots, according to the book. It suggests we react instinctively to signs of power and warmth.
Like how our ancestors were drawn to fat and sugar.
Kind of like that, yeah. Those resources were crucial for survival, and understanding social dynamics was just as crucial. Who has the power to help or harm? Who might offer warmth and support?
That's a great analogy. Power and warmth as sort of social nutrients.
Hmm. And research backs this up. Studies show that when we meet someone new, these are the first two things we assess primarily.
Do they seem powerful? Do they seem warm?
Exactly. Those are the gut checks.
And even for charisma styles that are mainly about presence, like the focus style the book talks about,
Uh,
you still need some power and warmth,
Oh,
right?
definitely. You can't completely neglect them. Too much presence without any warmth could feel, I don't know, intense, like an interrogation.
And too little power might make you seem maybe overeager or sort of submissive.
Precisely. So the book argues you need a balance, even if one pillar is dominant for a particular style.
Okay, so the pillars are presence, power, and warmth. And they all flow from your internal state. Which brings us right to what the book identifies as the primary obstacle to charisma.
Yes. And this is where it gets really interesting, I think. Because charisma starts in the mind, and body language is that subconscious reflection.
Right.
Trying to just fake charismatic behaviors externally without managing your inner world, it's likely doomed to fail, or at least feel really inauthentic.
Building a fancy balcony on a house with shaky foundations.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. And internal discomfort, whether it's physical, like being too hot, or mental, like anxiety, it directly sabotages how you feel, how you perform.
And how you're perceived. The book gives that great example of someone in a stiff hot suit,
Oh, yeah. And people thought they were tense about the conversation.
when really they were just physically uncomfortable. But people tend to interpret everything as being about them.
That example really stuck with me, too. Another huge obstacle the book highlights is our discomfort with uncertainty.
We really don't like not knowing, do we?
It's profoundly unsettling. Cobain mentions that people sometimes actually prefer a negative outcome they know for sure, rather than wait in suspense for an uncertain one, even if that uncertainty leaves room for a positive result.
Wow. And that discomfort can lead to rushing things, like negotiations.
Or revealing too much information just to fill an awkward silence, just to resolve the uncertainty.
And anxiety, which often comes from uncertainty, that's presented as a major charisma killer.
A huge one. Yet, paradoxically, the book also notes that the ability to tolerate uncertainty is a really strong predictor of business success among executives.
Interesting. So we have physical and mental discomfort, uncertainty.
Right.
What about self-criticism? Self-doubt?
Massive roadblocks. Cobain calls self-criticism the silent killer. She mentions hearing executives say they spend something like 80% of their day battling their inner critic.
80%. That's almost unbelievable. That's nearly a whole workday spent just fighting yourself.
It's incredibly draining.
Yeah.
And self-doubt, that deep-seated fear that you're just not good enough, that you're missing something essential.
Imposter syndrome falls under that, right?
Definitely. Where capable people feel like frauds. The book points out that over 70% of people experience feelings like that at some point.
Just knowing it's that common probably helps a bit. Takes some of the sting out.
It can, yeah. It normalizes it.
So where do all these negative internal states actually come from? We're just wired wrong.
Well, the book ties a lot of it back to those ancient survival mechanisms again. Fear, anxiety, discomfort. These feelings were designed to make us act, to get us out of danger.
They feel bad because they're supposed to motivate us to change something.
Exactly. But a pitch meeting isn't the same threat as, a saber-toothed tiger.
Right. The response is disproportionate now.
Precisely. In modern life, these same mechanisms can really work against us. Stage fright, for instance, can trigger that fight or flight response.
Shutting down the very parts of your brain you need most for the presentation.
Exactly. It's a natural reaction, physiologically, but totally unhelpful in that context. It's a perceived threat activating an old system.
Okay, so these internal obstacles are powerful, deeply rooted. How does the book suggest we actually handle this internal discomfort? There's a three-step process mentioned, right?
Yes, and this is a really key practical takeaway. Step one is destigmatize.
Mimi.
Normalize the discomfort. Recognize that these feelings, anxiety, doubt, fear, are totally normal human experiences. They're just hangovers from our survival past.
Okay.
The book suggests thinking of other people you respect and imagine them feeling this way. Your brain is surprisingly good at accepting that imagined reality, which makes your own feelings seem less shameful or unique.
And that's especially important for tackling shame, which the book calls the fear of being unlovable.
A powerful description. And our brains even equate social needs like belonging with physical survival. Being ostracized can light up the same brain pathways as hunger.
Wow. So understanding these feelings are universal helps neutralize that toxic shame.
It really does.
Yeah.
Okay, step two, neutralize negative thoughts.
How do you do that? I thought trying not to think about something makes it worse.
Exactly. Cobain mentions that classic finding trying to suppress a thought makes it stronger, the don't think of a white bear or yellow Jeep effect.
Right. So pushing negativity away just keeps it around.
Yeah.
What's the alternative?
The book suggests several strategies. Like, first, recognize that just because you have a thought doesn't make it accurate.
Okay.
View thoughts more impersonally, like they're just graffiti on the wall of your mind, or simply electrical impulses.
Detaching from them a bit.
Yeah. Label the emotion you're feeling. There is anxiety being felt rather than identifying with it. I am anxious. Depersonalize the experience. Observe it almost like a scientist.
That creates some helpful distance. I can see that.
It does. And then step three, rewrite reality.
This sounds interesting. What does that mean?
This is where you actively use your mind's power. The book emphasizes that your brain often accepts imagination as reality. That's the basis of the placebo effect, right? So, when you're faced with a difficult experience or interaction, you can consciously conjure an alternate, more positive, or simply more useful scenario or interpretation in your mind.
Like if someone cuts you off in traffic, instead of getting angry, you imagine they're rushing to the hospital.
Exactly. Or reinterpreting a curt email from a client as them just being busy, not angry at you. You choose a perception that serves you better emotionally.
Does the book suggest writing these down?
It does, actually, especially writing them down in the past tense, like the difficult meeting was surprisingly productive. Apparently, the brain can sometimes struggle to differentiate between a past tense visualization and something that actually happened.
Fascinating. Okay, so that three-step process helps manage the negative internal stuff. But how do we actively build and cultivate positive, charismatic mental states, going beyond just neutralizing the bad?
Right. Visualization is presented as a really powerful tool here, highly recommended, even critical, according to the book.
But not just idle daydreaming.
No, it needs to be precise, vivid, full of sensory detail. Like those Olympic skiers visualizing every single turn, every muscle movement on the course.
So it's focused, intentional mental rehearsal, visualizing positive outcomes, like clients smiling and nodding.
Or even using it before you write an important email, just to get yourself into the right headspace, the right feeling state.
Proactively wiring your brain for the state you want.
Exactly. Beyond visualization, another key practice the book explores is developing warmth, cultivating feelings of gratitude, goodwill, and compassion.
Warmth is so appealing, isn't it?
Yeah.
People like you, trust you, want to help you when you project it. But the book acknowledges it doesn't come easily to everyone.
True. And the suggested path often starts inward. Self-compassion is presented as a crucial first step, building warmth towards yourself first.
Before extending it outward as goodwill and empathy towards others.
Gratitude, in particular, is highlighted as a really powerful antidote to those charisma-killing feelings like resentment or desperation.
The idea of viewing your life through a third-person positive narrative. That's an interesting technique for gratitude.
It reframes things in a less self-critical way, helps you see the good, and actively practicing warmth towards others, even using simple internal phrases like, I like you, or asking yourself, which option brings the most love here? That can genuinely shift your feeling state.
And the book argues goodwill and compassion are just soft skills.
No, it frames them as essential business skills. It notes that many top executives now see compassion as a key leadership trait. Empathy is deeply embedded in charisma.
What about that inward step you mentioned, self-compassion? That seems like it might feel, I don't know, unnatural for some people.
It can be uncomfortable, yeah, especially if you're used to being hard on yourself. The book contrasts self-compassion with self-esteem.
How so?
Self-esteem is often based on evaluation, comparison. I'm good if I achieve X or Y. Self-compassion is more about acceptance. I am okay as I am, flaws and all.
And the research suggests self-compassion is actually more beneficial.
Yes, the studies Cobain cites show it leads to greater resilience, better responses to feedback, less defensiveness, more accountability, and lower denial, compared to people driven purely by self-esteem.
And meta practice, or loving-kindness meditation, is mentioned as a tool for this.
Yeah, the book encourages practicing it, even if it feels awkward or forced at first. It's presented as a powerful way to directly counter that inner critic and activate your brain's natural soothing system.
Okay, so we have these mental techniques, but the book also touches on the mind-body connection, right? How your physical state affects things.
Definitely. Your physiology has a direct impact. The book mentions those studies about expansive physical poses.
Standing tall, taking up space. The power pose idea.
Right, inflating like a gorilla, as the book puts it. It can actually increase hormones linked to confidence and decrease stress hormones like cortisol.
And Cobain shares her own experience with changing her posture.
Yeah, consciously walking like a movie star, trying to be incognito to change how she felt and how others perceived her. So deliberately changing your body can influence your mind and your projection.
It also briefly mentions managing willpower.
Yeah, strategically, like conserving mental energy.
Yeah.
And curating external inputs, using music playlists, for example, to deliberately set your emotional state before an important meeting or call.
Like an athlete warming up before a game, getting into the zone.
Exactly. It's a perfect analogy. You deliberately prepare your internal state. The book even suggests scheduling important, potentially charisma-draining tasks for later in the day if possible.
And avoiding negative interactions right before you need to be on.
Right. Don't walk into a high-stakes meeting right after a really draining argument if you can help it.
Okay, so we've covered managing the internal state, cultivating positive ones. How do you translate all that into outward action? Putting charisma into practice involves specific behaviors and skills, yes.
Yes. This is where the learned behaviors come in. When you combine them with that aligned internal state, that's when they project charisma effectively and authentically.
And a really key point seems to be that charisma isn't one size fits all. You don't have to become someone you're not.
Not at all. The book outlines different styles: focus charisma, visionary, authority, kindness charisma.
Each based primarily on one of the core pillars: presence, belief, confidence, power, warmth.
Exactly. And the right style depends on your natural personality, your goals, the situation, even the specific person you're talking to.
So you can blend them or switch between them.
You can, but the book warns against forcing a style that feels fundamentally unnatural, especially when the stakes are high. That's likely to backfire and feel awkward.
Makes sense.
Oh.
Okay, what about first impressions? They happen fast, the book says, and they're really impactful.
They really are. Appearance matters, not necessarily about being fashionable, but people are often drawn to similarity. So dressing within the upper range of the environment after doing a little research is a practical tip.
And the handshake, highlighted as surprisingly crucial.
Yeah, often underestimated. It's a signal of authority and trust. It's this little moment of physical connection that requires trust on both sides.
Moving into conversation itself, listening is presented as a key.
Cobain talks about master listeners who pause deliberately before responding.
Like the pianist saying the music is in the rests between the notes.
Exactly like that. That pause, even just a second or two, makes the other person feel truly heard, makes them feel valued, makes them feel intelligent.
And creating positive association seems fundamental too, like Pavlov's dogs.
Yes. People will link you to the feelings you consistently evoke in them.
So that's why accepting a compliment gracefully is important. It makes the giver feel good.
Right, reinforcing a positive link to you. And actively making others feel important, interesting when you're with them. That Bill Clinton example, again, that's a powerful way to build positive association. People remember how you made them feel.
The specific use of language is also key, isn't it?
Definitely. Using vivid metaphors and analogies makes abstract ideas concrete and memorable.
The book gives some great examples, like comparing accounting noncompliance to clients going over a waterfall.
Or Steve Jobs describing iPod capacity by saying it holds enough music to travel to the moon and back. It makes numbers relatable. Sensory-rich language just sticks in the brain better.
And avoiding the white elephant trap.
Right. Don't use negative phrasing like no problem or don't worry, because the listener's brain might just latch onto problem or worry.
Frame things positively instead. We'll take care of it.
Exactly. And always consider the value or exchange in any interaction. An email, a meeting, a conversation, it costs the other person their time and attention. So provide value.
Entertainment, information, or good feelings.
And keep it concise. Respect their time.
Your voice itself is also a vital tool for conveying warmth and power.
Hugely important. Your delivery strongly influences how your words actually land. The book mentions techniques like
Speaking slowly and deliberately signals confidence.
yes, using pauses intentionally, dropping your intonation at the end of sentences that broadcasts power, whereas rising intonation can sound uncertain, like you're asking a question.
And using proper breathing. Diaphragmatic breathing.
Right, to sound calm and anchored, not breathless or tense.
Body language techniques seem especially crucial in high-stakes situations where our sort of privative brain might take over.
They really are. The book talks about emotional contagion, how leaders' body language, their emotional state, spreads to others via mirror neurons.
So charismatic people are more emotionally contagious.
Generally, yes. Which means being able to manage your own body language helps manage the emotional ripple effect you create around you.
Mirroring is a classic technique mentioned for building rapport.
Subtly matching another person's posture or gestures. And the book describes the mirror then lead technique.
What's that?
You mirror first to establish that connection, that rapport. Then you gently shift your own posture towards a desired state, maybe calmer, more confident. And often the other person will subtly follow your lead. Oh, interesting. So you can potentially influence their state, like calming someone anxious.
Potentially, yes. It
Yeah,
can be quite effective.
Personal space matters too, apparently. Where you sit in relation to someone.
Yeah, sitting next to someone or at a 90-degree angle is generally more comfortable and feels more collaborative. Sitting directly across a table can unconsciously feel more confrontational.
And lead to shorter answers or more arguments.
Research suggests it can, yeah.
What about eye contact for people who find that difficult?
The book offers an interesting technique. Instead of a tense, narrow, evaluative stare, it suggests using a soft focus.
What does that mean?
Relaxing your gaze, expanding your peripheral vision slightly, maybe focusing more on the sensation of looking rather than analyzing. It not only makes eye contact easier if you're shy, but it also projects more warmth than a tense, laser-like focus.
And projecting power through body language is also key.
It really is. Confident body language can often override other signals, those expansive poses boosting confidence hormones.
And practicing stillness. Yes, when you speak. Avoiding fidgeting or excessive nodding just to reassure, it projects greater power and deliberateness. Stillness can be very powerful.
The book also looks at applying these principles in difficult situations,
Right.
framing them almost as opportunities.
Right. Preparation is key here. To win people over, Cobain mentions the Ben Franklin effect,
Asking someone for a favor.
especially asking for their opinion. It encourages them to subconsciously rationalize liking you. Why did I help this person? Oh, it must be because I like them.
That's clever.
Also, expressing genuine, specific appreciation for past help makes people feel valued and invested in you. And reminding people they chose you or your idea can encourage them to stick with that choice.
And crucially, avoid making others feel wrong.
Yes, because they'll just dig in their heels and rationalize their own position even harder and probably discredit you in the process.
What if the negativity is internal, like you're feeling resentment towards someone?
The book suggests practical things like writing venting letters that you never actually send, or even writing imagined apologies from them to you, just ways to process that negative emotion internally so it doesn't leak out and sabotage things.
Delivering criticism or bad news must be a huge charisma challenge.
It is, but the principles still apply. Focus on the desired behavior change, not on attacking the person. Depersonalize it. In the future, it would be helpful if...
Inject warmth and kindness.
Definitely. Imagine our respected mentor is watching how you deliver the feedback. That can help. And if you're wrong about something,
Just apologize.
A simple, sincere apology delivered with presence and warmth is incredibly powerful. When delivering bad news, express genuine care, acknowledge the impact it will have, and use your internal tools to manage your own discomfort. Don't project it onto them.
And charisma seems particularly vital in a crisis situation.
Critically important. The book notes that leaders' charisma often shines brightest during crises. It requires equanimity, staying calm under pressure by managing your internal state.
Expressing high expectations of your team.
Yes. Articulating a clear, bold vision for the future. Showing confidence, like that story of Napoleon reportedly riding alone towards an opposing army.
And acting decisively.
Exactly. It's about projecting stability and hope when things are chaotic.
It really sounds like an incredibly potent force, which brings us to the double edge of charisma, the book points out.
Absolutely. It's powerful, and with that power comes responsibility. People can be so drawn in by charisma
That they might follow blindly.
or become overly reliant on the charismatic person or take risks based purely on magnetism, not sound judgment. It needs to be wielded ethically.
And what about the flip side? Managing the effect you have on others. The book mentions people sometimes overshare around charismatic people.
That's the charisma effect on others, yeah. Cobain suggests using soft landing techniques if someone seems to be revealing more than they might be comfortable with later.
Like-
Pay attention, is this going too far? If so, gently interject. Maybe with a brief Me Too story to normalize things and subtly shift the focus, or just redirect the conversation kindly. The book argues interruption is sometimes actually warranted to protect the other person.
And recognizing that if you do project high charisma, you're kind of always on.
Yeah, you're under more scrutiny. It's always a little bit showtime, as the book puts it.
And ultimately, the book circles back to that core message. Charisma can be trained.
Focusing on these principles, presence, power, warmth, and consciously practicing the behaviors can significantly boost how charismatic you're perceived to be. It's not fixed.
It's a skill, like playing an instrument or learning a language.
Exactly. It improves with conscious effort and practice.
Okay, so let's try and bring it back to the core takeaways from this deep dive into the charisma myth.
Well, the central message, maybe the most surprising one, is that charisma really is presented as a learnable skill. It's not some mystical inherent trait you're just born with or without.
And its foundation rests on projecting three key things: presence, power, and warmth, mostly through body language.
Right. And the absolute key to getting that body language right and feeling genuinely charismatic is fundamentally about mastering your internal state
Handling discomfort, neutralizing those negative thought patterns.
and actively cultivating positive feelings, using techniques like visualization, practicing gratitude, self-compassion, general warmth towards others.
And then building on that solid internal foundation, you add the specific learned behaviors.
Exactly. Choosing a style that fits you,
Wow.
working on first impressions, refining conversation skills like deep listening and effective language use, and consciously using body language techniques.
It definitely sounds like it requires dedicated work and practice. No magic wand here.
No, definitely not. But the book strongly suggests the rewards are substantial, not just in how others perceive you and react to you.
But also in how you manage your own internal world, perhaps, feeling more in control.
Yeah, it shifts the focus from wishing you had something you don't to actively building something powerful that is actually within your control.
And that leaves us with a final thought for you to consider. Since charisma, as presented here, is so deeply tied to managing our own internal state and how that state influences how others perceive us and feel around us, ask yourself this.
How much of the magnetism you've admired in others, or perhaps the influence you hope to project yourself? How much of that is less about some magical inborn quality they possess?
And more about their learned mastery, maybe intentional, maybe totally unconscious of their own mind and body.
It really reframes charisma, doesn't it? Not as a rare gift, but as a profoundly human capability we can all potentially develop.
A fascinating deep dive today.